weather outside was frightful, and this game was also frightful, but the defense bailed the birds out again as they beat the Bills 13-12. Welcome to the Birds Nest Podcast. I'm Joe Donahue. Thank you so much for joining us. I hope you had a great Christmas holiday. This Philadelphia Eagles game that we just saw today was quite a scary game, especially throughout the second half. We saw the theme from the Philadelphia Eagles all season rear its ugly head once again. An offense that was dominating much of this game took its foot off the gas and really let the Buffalo Bills just hang around for way too long, relying on the defense to keep them in the game and fend off a late game comeback. We've seen this story repeated in and out of this season. And look, the Bills do have a penchant for coming back to win games, but the Philadelphia Eagles had multiple chances to put this game well out of reach of the Buffalo Bills. The Bills were shut out for the overwhelming majority of this game, and the Eagles just seemed to revert back to their predictable, uninspired ways on offense that caused the Philadelphia Eagles offense to repeatedly stall. And it's a shame because the first half was a really solid showing by that Philadelphia Eagles offense. The Eagles put up 174 total offensive yards. 110 of those were on the pass against a good passing defense, I would point out. Again, the Eagles defense held the Bills to 0 points through the first 45 minutes of the game. And the Eagles were doing just really, really well. Again, especially on offense, it was Eagles all the way for the first 30 minutes of this game. It was aggressive. It capitalized on the opportunities that they had. And though you're never comfortable with a 2-score lead at halftime, there was definitely a lot of promise that the Eagles could continue to put on a good showing. Jalen Hurts in the first half went 13 for 20 in the passing game. Saquon had 54 yards on 11 carries. A.J. Brown had 68 yards on 5 catches, including a really, really impressive 27-yard grab. Devontae Smith had a 14-yard grab as his longest, but he had 2 catches for 25 yards. And a huge congratulations to Dallas Goedert, who set a new Eagles record for most touchdowns by a tight end in a regular season with 11, surpassing the 10 that were scored in 1965 by Pete Retzlaff. And the Eagles won the time of possession battle by 2 minutes in the first half, 16 minutes to 14 minutes. And again, they were capitalizing on opportunities. There was a really, really critical fumble that occurred in the first quarter that really set the Philadelphia Eagles up for their first points of the game. It was the only touchdown that the Eagles scored, and it came as a direct result of the Eagles defense creating a fumble that ricocheted back into Bills territory. The Bills were deep in Eagles territory. The fumble ricocheted back into Bills territory. The Eagles recovered the fumble. Jalen Hurts marched them down the field and scored that touchdown off of that pass to Dallas Goedert. So we had an Eagles offense that was capitalizing on opportunities, that was really doing a great job through the first 30 minutes of the game. But when it came time to come back out of the locker room for the second half, as has been the theme, the Philadelphia Eagles offense seemed to stick in the locker room for the second half of the game. Of the 7 pass attempts that Jalen made in the second half, he completed none of them. 0. Zilch. Nada. The Birds held the ball for just 8 minutes and 45 seconds in the final 30 minutes of play, which means that the Buffalo Bills held the ball for well over 20 minutes. And the Eagles notched just 18 yards in the second half. Now, we'll come back to the Bills holding the ball for well over 20 minutes, but I did want to make sure that I pointed that out. Now, we've talked about how important Jalen is to the run game, and absent a tush push, Jalen had just 1 real carry for 4 yards. The run game is exponentially more effective when Jalen can be a threat to take off, as we've seen in the last few weeks. The Bills did wind up shutting down the Eagles in the run game. They were able to make Saquon Barkley a real non-factor in the second half of the game, and the Eagles' run game really struggled in the final 30 minutes of the game. And Jalen's legs were never any real threat to the Buffalo Bills, which is a shame because, again, when Jalen is able to run the ball, he absolutely can open up something else. He can open up the secondary. He can keep the Buffalo Bills honest. Instead, the Eagles were winding up playing one-dimensional football. And when the Eagles' offense can't fire on all cylinders, that takes a heavy toll on the defense, who once again had to rise to the occasion to deliver a victory to keep the Buffalo Bills from scoring more than 2 touchdowns. And to their credit, the defense was exceptional. Josh Allen was held to 23 for 35 for 262 yards. The Eagles sacked him 5 times. Again, one of those sacks resulted in a key fumble that led to that Eagles touchdown. Josh Allen was never comfortable, and it was pointed out multiple times on the broadcast that he was still dealing with some injury concerns. But the Eagles were very, very present in the backfield. Again, we talked about the 5 sacks, but there were also 7 tackles for a loss. There were 6 quarterback hits. The Eagles were very much owning the line of scrimmage for the majority of this game. But at the same time, most of Josh Allen's success came in the fourth quarter. Allen went 9 for 13 for 102 yards. Now, the Eagles did give up a few big plays that kept the Bills in the game, but overall, I was pretty satisfied with the Philadelphia Eagles defense. And even special teams was on point. Jake Elliott was perfect after his inconsistency last week. Jake Elliott went 2 for 2 in this game on field goals and nailed the extra point that the Eagles had. And on the defensive side of special teams, there was a key blocked point after touchdown by Jalen Carter that wound up making the difference at the end. That was what forced the Bills to go for 2 after their final touchdown of the game. And Nick Sirianni spoke about the importance of Jalen Carter blocking that PAT in his post-game press conference.
The blocked extra point was huge. I actually, as we went through some of the highlights afterwards, I forgot to mention it, and that was a huge play, because then they're kicking a field goal or an extra point to win the game at the end instead of going for 2 to try to win. And so, yeah, huge to have him back. He did a great job of taking care of himself and getting himself ready to go, and it's huge to have him back and involved in that defense.
The defense giving up 2 touchdowns in such a low-scoring game isn't great, but it's also not really their fault at the end of the day, because if the Eagles' offense were able to play 60 minutes of football, I don't think the Eagles' defense gets itself to the point where it's so tired that it's going to be forced to play soft coverage in certain cases, or you're having miscommunications on defense that are leaving receivers wide open on critical third down plays. You have the opportunity when you're on defense, when you're on the bench, to go back and make whatever adjustments are necessary. And the Eagles' defense is really, really good at doing that, but they never had the opportunity to make those adjustments because they were always on the field in the second half. If football is the ultimate team sport, as Nick Sirianni is wont to say, when the offense isn't working, the defense is going to be impacted. And we saw that tonight in multiple ways. Now, I will say this. In addition to the opportunities that the Eagles' defense gave the Eagles' offense, the Buffalo Bills also gave the Eagles a lot of opportunities through quite a number of unforced errors. We talked about the fumble, but a lot more of Josh Allen's incompletions were drops than bad throws or pass breakups. There were many times that the ball was in the receiver's hand and the receiver just simply couldn't haul it in. And that incompletion is not on Josh Allen. That's on the receiver not being able to haul that ball in. And at the end of the game, the 2-point conversion, after Josh Allen scores that final touchdown on what is effectively the 1/2 yard line, it was a bad Josh Allen throw. The receiver had the Eagles beat in the back of the end zone. It was overthrown by about 1.5 yards. So the Eagles were really the beneficiaries of a lot of unforced errors by the Buffalo Bills, and that's what makes this more frustrating. The Eagles had more than their fair share of opportunities to win this game by an incredibly wide margin and just wouldn't make the Bills pay for their mistakes. Now, to the Eagles' credit, they do have a 3-game win streak, and the team didn't give up a turnover this game. So, props to them for both of those things. There was definitely some good coming out of that. It's just they seem to have forgotten the lessons they learned against the weaker teams that they faced over the course of the last couple weeks. We saw them play a complete game against the Raiders, and while the Bills probably could not have been shut out at the end of the day today, Josh Allen and Sean McDermott are just that good of a quarterback head coach combo, and the Bills again are a playoff team. They were vying for the number 1 spot in the AFC East. Thanks to today's game, they are out of contention for that and will make the playoffs as a wild card team. But while the Eagles probably could not have shut the Bills out today, there were definitely times when I thought that the Eagles could dominate, could manhandle this game, could really just power through it, and really should have led this game by multiple touchdowns, not 2. The Eagles do have a game coming up against the Commanders where they can hopefully correct some of what they missed this week, but a lot of these things are the same things that we've been screaming about all season. The schemes, the play calling. There was one time where the Buffalo Bills stacked all 11 guys in the box, and the Eagles were lining up to run the ball. And the Eagles didn't seem to be doing anything where they were trying to keep the Bills honest. There weren't guys that were going downfield to try to get open. If you're going to stack all 11 guys in the box and try to shut down a run game, send an A.J. Brown or a Devontae Smith downfield. Make the Bills defend those guys. The Bills should not have been able to predict that the Eagles were going to run in that situation. But the Bills did. And that play, in particular, went for a loss of yards, and a bad loss of yards, I would point out, for that. So the Eagles really struggled. And we saw that, again, with the time of possession battle. We saw that with the Eagles' abysmal 3 for 13 third down conversion percentage. But ultimately, the Eagles have to fix things up. They've got another game to do it against the Commanders. But after that, there are really no more easy games. The Eagles could still, as of this recording, get the number 2 seed, which would mean that they play the Green Bay Packers in the wild card round. The Packers are a little bit of a mess right now, and I'm sure that the Eagles would love to host them, because if not them, it's going to be a team from the NFC West. But the Eagles do have to figure out a way to get this Philadelphia Eagles offense in particular to play a complete game against a challenging opponent. Not just play enough to eke out a victory while letting the opponent hang around for longer than they should, which has been the theme of this season. It's been the reason why the Eagles have lost more than a handful of games, thinking particularly back to the Denver Broncos game, thinking particularly back to games that occurred shortly after the bye week. The Eagles coming to be able to dominate a team, which they definitely have the capability to do, involves finding what works, executing on what is working, making the adjustments so that way what is working continues to work, and not playing just to avoid a loss. As Jalen Hurts said post-game, it's about getting into a rhythm.
I think we got into a good rhythm and good groove. We're able to move the ball down the field in the first half, and in the second half, there are a lot of things that I have to watch the tape on to be able to pinpoint. Obviously, maintaining aggression is one thing, and maintaining rhythmic ball play, then just going out there and executing ultimately. So you always look yourselves in the mirror with that.
So let's not lose sight of the fact that the Eagles are in fact 11-5. They have the potential to be 12-5 and be at the number 2 spot with a win next week and a couple of fortuitous Bears losses. But there is definitely plenty of opportunity for this Philadelphia Eagles team following the win. But for now, the Eagles did do exactly what they needed to do. They came out of Buffalo with a victory, setting themselves up for vying for hosting a couple of playoff games should they get to the point where they're playing in multiple playoff games. But December is when you want to be playing your best football heading into January. You want to start setting yourself up so that way when you get into January, you can really excel. And I think it's fair to say that I did not see the Philadelphia Eagles' best football on the field tonight. So as we close the book on the calendar year of 2025, the Eagles' next game will be in 2026. Hopefully the Philadelphia Eagles will be able to fix things up and close out the season with another win to start the year off on the right foot. But as always, let me know what you think in the comments below. What were your thoughts about this game? What stood out to you? What are you really glad about in this game? What are your emotions? What concerns do you have going into this final week of the season? Let me know. And thank you so much to everyone for tuning into the Bird's Nest podcast. You can support the Bird's Nest podcast by liking and subscribing to Bird's Nest Media right here on YouTube, as well as by sharing to your social media pages. You can also find us on SoundCloud, iTunes, Amazon Podcasts, Spotify, the Odyssey app, and iHeartRadio. Please visit birdsnestmedia.com for additional Eagles and NFL coverage. And if you feel so inclined to support us in a different way, you can find the link to our Patreon in the description below or at birdsnestmedia.com. Thank you so much for tuning in, and let's go Eagles!